What happens when a farmer, a dietitian, and an artist decide to write a cookbook? Welcome to Everything Cookbooks, the podcast for readers, writers, and cooks. I'm Molly Stevens, and I am here with Kristin Donnelly. Hey, Kristin.
Hey, Molly.
We've both done I've done some, but you've done a lot of collaborative cookbooks.
Yes.
It seems to me sort of the general setup is often there's the practitioner, the chef, the person who's the expert, and then the writer.
Yep.
That's the team. Everyone,
roles are fairly clearly defined. Each collaboration always works a little bit differently, obviously, but and some are more organized than others.
Right. Yeah. Some are, up front what you're getting into a little more than others.
Yeah.
Well, today we're talking to three sisters. One is a farmer, one's a dietitian, and one's an artist. And they got together to write a book based on vegetables, Asian vegetables that the farmer sister grows. But they each contributed kind of equally to it.
Yeah. It's so interesting to me, the decision to write this book together. And then I'm such a process nerd, so I'd love to know exactly how they divided everything up and even just handled once you have a manuscript, how do you handle that among three authors? So,
right. And family members.
Yeah.
Right.
And then that's a whole other dynamic, right?
Yeah. And they live, so we should say they live in Quebec.
In Quebec,
they're French-Canadian, Stéphanie, Caroline, and Patricia Wang, but they don't live together.
Yeah, they live actually quite far apart.
Quite far apart, and they have written a book called Asian Vegetables. We're looking at the English edition. It came out in French first, which is published in Quebec. Caroline is the oldest of the sisters. She's the dietitian. Stéphanie is the farmer. Mm-hmm. And the vegetables are grown on her farm in southern Quebec. And then Patricia is a musician and an artist living in Rimouski. Mm-hmm. So the three of them got together and wrote this kind of enormous, beautiful book called Asian Vegetables. And we're going to find out how they did it.
I'm excited.
Let's get to it. Welcome to Everything Cookbooks, Caroline, Stéphanie, and Patricia. I think this is a first that we've had three guests and three sisters, no less. So we're really thrilled you're here.
Very, very excited to talk about your book.
We tend to jump right in. And so we just want to start. And I know in the acknowledgement, Stéphanie, you mentioned that you came up with the idea for the book in 2018. 4 years later, we have this beautiful book. So I'm just curious, what made you want to write this book?
Well, I was growing Asian vegetables since 2016. And then we started doing CSA baskets. And so we had to introduce a bunch of new vegetables to my customers. So that's when I asked Caroline to write some fact sheets about the different vegetables, like just a general introduction to what's the vegetable, where it's coming from, how to use it in the kitchen. So after 2 seasons of going through the different vegetables, so we had quite a few of those fact sheets, and we felt like this is a material that is not readily available. We felt that there was a need for a printed book specifically on these Asian vegetables. So we brainstormed between sisters whether we would go for self-publishing or approach a publishing house. So we were kind of in the midst of doing those researches. And then I happened to talk to a friend of a friend. She did publish books by herself. So we talked about the different options. And then a year later, she contacted me saying, okay, I'm now working with Parfum d'Ancre, and we are looking for projects to develop that falls into this category of food, environment, family stories. So she thought about our discussion, and she presented the project already to the team, and they were excited. So we went forward.
That's cool. So food, environment, family stories. That's exactly what this book is. Just to clarify, you've been farming, right, for a couple of years, right? That's neat that it came very organically out of something that you were already doing.
Yeah. And those handouts were something that you would give out in the CSA, right?
In the newsletter. Because
in
we
the
always
newsletter.
Oh, in the newsletter
a
too.
weekly
Yeah.
newsletter with
Yeah.
recipes or what's happening on the farm. But I also introduce every week a fact sheet on vegetable.
And you mentioned that Caroline was helping you do the writing. So how did you decide to do it as a team, all three sisters? It's amazing. Family project.
And I guess because I have a background in nutrition, I work as a dietitian. For Stéphanie, she has so much to do with the farm, growing vegetables, and then also sending that newsletter. So she thought that she would benefit from having one of her sisters helping or someone helping to write some information about those vegetables. So I just presented those vegetables, added some info about preparing and cooking and also sharing some ideas how to cook those vegetables. So just kind of help Stéphanie in her work.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, so the two of them kind of, had this going on. And in parallel, I was already having a project of my own, asking questions to my family and, collecting the stories, kind of doing a musical project with it. And so my sisters asked me to join the project so we could have family stories in the book. And of course, I said yes.
That's so cool.
Wow. It all just makes so much sense just hearing those three. Yeah.
From a very, I guess, pragmatic point of view, how did it actually work? Did you just have a lot of documents on a Google Drive? Were you mailing things back and forth?
You live far from me.
Yeah.
I mean, you all live in Quebec, but not next door.
Yeah, I have to say that Rimouski is 600 kilometers from Montreal. So Quebec province is a big province.
Yeah.
So we're very organized, I think. I think I can say that. We have a drive with a lot of files. And we had a lot of... I don't know how to say that, but in French we say PV for procès verbal. So when we have some working sessions, we type the decisions, and so we're very organized.
Yeah, sounds like it.
Yeah.
But that was one of the challenge because each sister were a different city in Quebec province. But with Google Drive, sharing the documents, and also when working on document, either Word or PDF, we would do the comments, but everything is online. So that's practical. And maybe we're going to talk more about that. But in terms of the process, for example, the writing part and reviewing each sister's writing, one thing that I found really useful is to use an Excel spreadsheet where we would write all the book content on each row, and then each sister would be responsible for a section, and then we will use that spreadsheet. So when a sister has to finish to write a section, then we will make it clear that the other sisters can review that part, and we will proceed like that. It would take maybe a 3 review for the first draft or something like that. So that was a way to follow the work.
Yeah. I love those little project management systems and how people kind of come up with their own versions. And to be clear, so this book you wrote it in French, right?
Yes.
And it was pitched to a Canadian publisher. We're curious because we mostly talk to authors who are publishing their books in the United States first, maybe sometimes in England or Australia first, but we haven't talked to many Canadian authors. So I'm curious, I guess, number one, did you know that the book would come out in English as well? And number two, I guess, do you have a sense of how publishing is different in Canada compared to the United States? Or
no, basically we were accompanied by the Parfendant Publishing House from the beginning. So when my friend's friend came back to me saying, okay, would you be interested in doing this with us? We didn't write everything at that time. We just had the idea. So with them, step by step, they just told us, okay, now you should develop your full idea of your table of content, and then they would review it. So it was really interesting for us, I think, so that we did not felt like we did a lot of writing for nothing, because everything was kind of thought beforehand. for me, what I thought is they would cut a lot of our text because it's a big book, like 350 pages. I was sure after we sent the first manuscript, they would cut, I don't know, 1/3 out at least, because I felt, well, there's a lot of word and text, but no, they didn't. And I felt really respected in that process, that they felt every section was relevant. Although in the book, we're going into different directions, like Patricia even teach how to read and speak Cantonese.
Right.
Yeah.
So there's and we talk about traditional Chinese medicine, but everything has the core line of the Asian vegetables. So it makes sense in the end.
There was no proposal, is what I'm hearing. You just worked with them and developed the outline once you'd agreed on writing this book together.
We did make a proposal that I wanted to specify. So our editor, so Stéphanie's friends, contacted her. She did ask for a proposal. So we did send a proposal. We presented us as authors, the three of us, and also the idea that we have for the book to who we intended to write, so the readers, and the ideas for the content, so the 3-part, the gardening, the cooking, the storytelling. Did we have already the idea of the 15 vegetables? No, maybe not. I think that was discussed with the publisher, but we did have an idea of what we wanted to present for each vegetables, like how to grow them, the cooking tips, recipes. Yeah, so we sent that.
Okay, yeah. The structure is so interesting. I mean, you mentioned the 15 vegetables, and so it's seasonal. So we have the 4 seasons, but then within the 15 vegetables that you chose to highlight, that creates the structure, and then all this other content that's in there. And we're just curious about how you came up with this structure.
And that's interesting because I came back into my ideas of our writing process. And I think we did discuss the structure, like even before sending the proposal. Stéphanie, because she's growing the vegetables, she already had that idea of presenting the information through the season so we can follow a farmer's season.
I also did a training course, like it was like a weekend long with a person who wrote and published 2 books. So it was like a writing training program. So during that weekend, we developed the structure of the book, and she shared a lot of advices for all of the different steps of publishing a book with a publishing house and some writing tips. So it was really helpful. And at the end of that weekend, I kind of had the structure pretty clear, and I presented it to the sisters, and it helped really to be able to divide the whole book into, 40 sections. So it would be really easy for us to split who was going to write what. So we were all responsible for categories. So Patricia, the storytelling, for me, gardening, and Caroline, the cooking and vegetables. And then we had a lot of shared sections like introduction, conclusion, and these different things.
As you mentioned, there's so many types of content. There's growing, but then it's not just gardening information. You're often talking, it sounds like, Stéphanie, you're talking to people who are potentially other farmers, and some of these like self-care and mindset tips for getting through the season. And I'm wondering like who you pictured as your reader.
Yeah, one of the main goals was for me to talk to other vegetable growers, especially small scale organic. So all my other colleagues, because I feel that there's a need for more growers of these vegetables, because I have a lot of demand, and honestly, I cannot supply the whole demand. So there's a lot of space for more offer on these vegetables. I've read a lot of gardening books and market gardening books, and I could never find this language of really taking care of ourselves and going through burnout, how to recover. And the whole book for me is kind of it's the way I came to understand farming as it should be. For us, it has to be sustainable, not only profitable, but also sustainable for us on a daily basis, because otherwise we will get tired, fed up, and switch work.
Right.
So we see a lot of that, and the goal is to maintain us as farmers, maintain our farms on a more durable scale. So yeah, a lot of my colleagues actually wrote to me, especially about this section on burnout, to say, I'm so happy you wrote this. It really talks to me. We need to talk about it more.
It's beautiful because we talk a lot about sustainability in agriculture, referring to the land and the climate, but not necessarily the individuals, human cost. So that's really interesting to hear, and explains a lot why the book is structured the way it is. But then your choice to include the recipes and make it a cookbook too, because it is, I mean, it's more than a cookbook, but it's structured around these, I think it's 45 recipes, 15 vegetables. Each one has 3 or so recipes. And so how did that decision to include the recipes come about?
So it's 40 recipes, 2-3 recipes per vegetables. And we had the idea of including recipes right at the beginning, like for the proposal. It just makes sense because you want people to be able to cook those vegetables.
Sure.
It's nice to have ideas of how to cook quickly a vegetable, but it's also nice to have a recipe. But then for the recipes, we did brainstorm because we didn't intend to write all the recipes by ourselves. So we did invite chef and family members or people we know who cook those vegetables. Stéphanie, she works with a lot of chefs, like she sells her vegetables to a lot of chefs in her area. So that was just for her making sense to include some of them in the book. So she did ask if any chefs wanted to contribute to some recipes. And we did the same for our family.
Yeah, maybe a note that actually at the beginning, we were not thinking of including as many recipes in the book. I think we're talking maybe about 15, 20 recipes, but it's the publishing house team felt like it would be a better seller if there would be like 40 recipes. So really more of a cookbook.
Got it. It's interesting because we sometimes talk about, where a book might fit on the shelf or where, or in a bookstore. And there is a gardening section oftentimes, but then there's also a cookbook section. So it sounds like they wanted it to maybe sit in the cookbook section.
I just wanted to say also that there are some friends that I have some recipes featured in the book. And it's about half of the recipes are from chefs and the other half from family members and friends. And with 40 recipes, we had that possibility to have a variety of recipes. So main course, but also side dishes or even desserts.
Yeah, there's a cocktail.
Also drinks, yes.
Yeah.
And cooking level, I feel like it was interesting because there were some that were so simple, like roasted bok choy, but then others that clearly were from a chef that had, multiple components.
Turbo with lobster and some very chefy, intricate.
Yeah. I really enjoy the eclectic nature of the recipes, and especially those that come from friends. Like you can tell this was maybe something you had tasted from a friend and really loved.
We really wanted like that variety of type of recipes, of level of difficulties, and of type of cuisine as well. So we did thought about who we can ask, and also the people suggested some recipes, and sometimes we would suggest, could you do Cantonese fried rice? So just like we wanted some recipes, we had some ideas, but yeah, and also the people suggested some recipes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we wanted a balance between also some traditional or authentic Asian food, but also modern takes on those, and also just recipes that were very original, not really anchored in a tradition.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Kristin and I were talking and noticing you use maple syrup as a sweetener, which is certainly not a traditional Cantonese sweetener, but you're in Quebec, so that makes sense. And there's apple cider vinegar and dried cranberries and things that also reflect the region you live in too.
And I guess it's also because this book is a praise for local vegetables, so it also makes sense, and that's the way I think we cook at home too, is that we would prefer local ingredients rather than Asian store-bought ingredient imported. And actually a lot of those sauces have a lot of different ingredients, additions, or so. Yeah, we like to cook more with pure or natural ingredients.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, but even then, I'd say that, well, this book is a tribute to our family, aside from everything else. And our family also adapted themselves to the areas where they lived through that immigration process. And in Madagascar, they had to do it. And in Canada, at Quebec, they had to do it. So our family also cooks with maple syrup. But there wasn't any maple syrup in Madagascar, of course.
Right.
Right.
And the testing of the recipes, so the ones you developed yourself, but then if you were getting the recipes from friends, and was that also on the spreadsheet? Who's going to test it and who's going to cook it and make sure it is tasty and everything that you want it to be?
We did test all the recipes, but
Sure.
but I would say that if we had to do it again, we will plan the testing like ahead. So we did test going on. At some point in the process, we thought, oh, we have to test all the recipes. so we did like do that, but it was like a lot of work and it wasn't really planned ahead. We could have planned it better or earlier.
Now you know.
Yeah, and we did ask some friends to help us test recipes, but we also tested a lot of them, and it was interesting. It brought a lot of questions back to the chef who wrote the recipe, so there was a lot of back and forth. Yeah, we are very lucky to have had very patient and chef to work with, because some of them I called a lot.
Well, and you do a very nice job of giving credit too for anyone who's contributed a recipe. There's an essay about who they are and what they mean to you and the process. So it's a very community. It feels like a very big community.
Yeah, it really does.
And I think it reflects also how Stéphanie works. She really works within her community. Yeah, it's again just like a reflection of how she works.
You love everything cookbooks, right? And we love making it for you. If you're ready to take this relationship to the next level, go to everythingcookbooks.com/support. There you'll find links to our new merch, including the coziest t-shirts and sweatshirts, and our bookstore, where we earn commission from every book you buy. You can also leave us a review on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to the show. Again, go to everythingcookbooks.com/support to find all the ways to show us love. And thanks for listening.
When we first saw this book, I think one of the things that Kristin and I were really struck with is so often we see vegetable books from, places we think of as like California, or what we think of more as like where people grow things. And to be in Quebec, having a vegetable farm is really certainly something we could talk more about, because people don't think of what can be grown there. Certainly the season is short, but it's not that short that you can't do. I mean, you do such a good job of talking about what will grow there.
And extending the season.
Mm-hmm.
We are in northern climate. Yeah. Actually, we're in northern temperate climate in Quebec. But where I farm in Fredericksburg, it's called Quebec's Florida, because it's the more southern point. So we do have a long summer season, especially more with climate change. It's perfect because we have the spring and the fall, which is cooler, where we can grow a lot of those leafy Asian greens. And then we have kind of a hot summer where we can do tropical plants as well. So it's perfect to have a wide range of vegetables. And then we have winter to rest. So it's pretty good.
Yeah.
And some people extend the season by growing leafy greens in a greenhouse in the winter. So you can grow all year long if you really want. In the book, I tried to keep it more of a general audience. So basically what you can grow outdoor in the field without any heated greenhouse. So that was our focus, to keep it accessible.
I love that you address the insects and even have a wonderful picture of the flea beetles that have attacked the mustard greens or whatever it is, because that's a reality for all of us.
Yes, it's part of the game.
Exactly. Yeah.
Back to the community, in the acknowledgements, we noticed that there were quite a lot of people who reviewed the manuscript for scientific accuracy, linguistic accuracy. When did you decide that was going to be necessary? And like, just even logistically, how did you make that happen?
Well, because I wrote a lot of the gardening part, and I did not study in agronomy or like in the technique of agriculture. So sometimes I felt a bit like, I really wanted to have some colleagues to review the part. So I asked my agronomist to review some specific, more scientific parts, and then also 2 colleague friends from organic farms, one of them being a seed growers, because we had a lot of issue with all, varieties, cultivars, and all of those vegetables. So he was very useful in clarifying some things, and sometimes also felt like, okay, it's still confusing, but there's kind of no better way to say it. So yeah, we sent them the sections when they were ready for reviewing. I think just one of them maybe read more lengthily, like the whole book, but the other ones were just few sections. So other than that, we did not send the book to anybody to review, just for general reading. It was the publishing house. There was, 4 or 5 round of edits. And the first one, there was so many comments.
Yeah. Yes, we know.
Scary. And then with all of our replies, like the document would be so heavy, it would jam, and there wasn't a technical issue at that point.
The computer starts smoking.
Yeah.
Floating.
Right. In those edits back and forth with your editor, everybody, each one of you went through them, or?
Yes, we went through everything, but each of us had like her special and dedicated section, as we mentioned earlier. So the priority was for each of us to review those sections and then go over everything else. So that's how we worked.
It's remarkable from a voice standpoint that you all learning that you wrote the storytelling, wrote the food, wrote the gardening, because it has one voice. You write in the first person plural. It's aside from like Stéphanie, your burnout story, it's all we and us. It does read like one voice. So it's remarkable. And maybe that's because you're sisters and you're so connected, but you don't feel like they're 3 different people talking. At least I didn't when I read it.
But maybe because we did those review after each sisters wrote it. So, of course, for the first revision, that was more intense for reviewing. So really every sisters reviewed all the other sections. And I guess for that first revision, kind of fine-tune the voice or like the wording and making it clear as well. Sometimes it's clear for the writer, but not really for the other people who reads the part. So I guess at the end, it feels like it's more like coherent. Like
yes.
Yeah, I think it's all about the mindset too, because although we were responsible for certain sections, we wanted consensus. Can I say consensus? Yes. And from the beginning, it was clear that we wanted consensus, and we were always trying to find compromise. And even in the section where one was, let's say, more responsible of that section. So I think that's why the result is one voice.
How involved were you with the translation?
It happened this summer, actually.
Okay.
I know I read the whole book twice, at least. From beginning to end. And for the 2 process, like in the French and English round of revisions, I was really amazed at the quantity of edits we had to do, even despite so many people had went through, like the linguistic review, all the editors. Like until the end, we would always find typos and mistakes and so many things, grammar. And I think that was one of our strengths to being perfectionist about the reviews, because basically my lesson is that you cannot just rely upon the other ones who will read it, because it's such a lengthy book that we did find a lot of French mistakes during the English revision. But still, I think it's very few of those mistakes compared to the length of the book. So I think we did a great job, but it was many hours.
Yeah. That sounds really intense.
talk about the design and photography before we let you go, because it's a stunning book. It's a real achievement that way.
We did suggest names for photographer, and particularly so Virginie Gosselin. So we were really lucky that she accepted to work with our book. She worked for 3 fois par jour as well. So I had all the magazine, and so I was looking for pictures. That was what I had in mind for our book. And so Virginie Gosselin pictures was the design that I had in mind. That's interesting also because her parents are farmer, or they produce cheese, and they work in the area near Fröhlichburg in Saint-Jean-sur-Richelieu. So she already has some interest in farmers, artisan, and she knows that area. So she was really interested in the project as well. Genuine interest in the work Stéphanie is doing as a farmer, because her family as well are working on a farm. So it was great to be able to have her in the project.
The photography is a big part of it, but there are also these line drawings at the beginning of every vegetable entry. Really beautiful, botanically accurate drawings, detailed drawings of these vegetables. And then also the illustrations of your family's immigration history, and just curious where those came from. And did you always know they were going to be part of it?
So those drawings were added by the graphic designer of the book. So it was more like a design choice.
Okay.
About the map, because the book is a tribute to our family, and also because I think it was important for us to tell the general story and travel of our family. So it was just a visual way of telling the China to Madagascar to Canada, Quebec, and other places, traveling. And it's not a narrative that we hear often, the Chinese Madagascar one. And it's part of our being, and it's part of the cuisine that we grew up with. It's part of our heritage. So I think it was really important for us to say that and to put it on a map.
Yeah.
China, Madagascar, and Quebec.
The illustration, I mean, you read the story, but the illustration, somehow visualizing it makes the story even more powerful. Yeah.
I think so. And you can see the 3 continents. It's 3 continents through 3 generations. So it's a lot of kilometers.
Yeah.
And maybe I can add also in terms of design choices, we had at the beginning, even like at the proposal stage, the idea of having some painting, like more like aquarelle, to introduce each chapter, just like a Chinese type of aquarelle, but more in a modern sense. So we did ask like to have that in the book, but you'll notice that there's no such illustration. So there was some choices to make. So the publisher went for 100% like photography with the photographer, and we have a great photographer, Virginie Gosselin. So we are really happy with that. But yeah, we did have to say, okay, there won't be those aquarelle. And we wanted that because we wanted to have some poetic in the book, and you might notice it with some poems.
Well,
and
actually,
the poems are not in the English version. That's why I just thought about that. So there is poems in the French version, but yeah, in the English version, there's no poems. But yeah, so that was another choice that had to be made for the English version. So the poems were in French.
Yeah, but it was a bit disappointing that they did not ask us whether we would replace them, find new English poems. But I guess their time and financial budget for the translation was limited, so they had to just cut them off. But yeah, it feels like it's not as full and complete as the French book, where you have like an epigraph at the beginning of the book, and then you have a poem every beginning of section. Season, and then at the end there's the whole poem that Patricia wrote, which is beautiful. So people will have to check for the French version.
It's poems, but also quotes. I think it's half quotes and poems. I think it was evocative of an atmosphere. I think an atmosphere that we wanted the reader to be put in. So yeah, it's, as Stéphanie says, it's a pity that it's not in the English version.
And I love the way you say that, an atmosphere you want to put the reader in, because I feel like that from the photography.
Yeah, there are lots of full page photographs of the farm, of
things
people
growing.
gardening. Yeah.
Landscape.
Yeah, and for the whole design, it's Julie Massy. She was our design director for the French book, and she's the one who really did a masterpiece into putting a lot of text into a readable and in a way that reader can read it and not feel like oppressed by so much content. So she really did a nice job.
And working with the photographer was a single photographer who did both the food dishes and the landscapes. Yeah. How did that work?
There was 6 photo shoot days, 3 at the farm and 3 in the studio, if I remember well.
Mm-hmm.
And there was 1 in the spring, 1 in the summer, and 1 in the fall.
Mm-hmm.
So we would capture the farm at different moments and also have some days at the studio where we would shoot like 6 recipes per day. And so we would cook the recipe. We would ask the chef or people who proposed the recipe if they wanted to be there in person. So a lot of them were there to really cook their recipe and have it photographed. So it was fun. It was big full days.
Yeah, intense.
But yeah, the photographer Virginie Gosselin specialized in food photos. So, and she has all of those dishes and cloths and different material surfaces for tables and all. So it was fun to play with all of that.
And it seems like Patricia and Caroline came to the farm for the photos because the 3 of you are in many of them. Yeah.
Yeah, we were involved. Yeah, we were present for the photo shoots.
Yeah. How long did it take to write this book?
It took a year to write the book, yes. And the photo shoot, like Stéphanie said, throughout the season, from spring to fall.
I think it's 2 years, like 1 year writing and then 1 year editing and photo shoots.
And then waiting for printing.
Yeah.
So the French edition came out in the spring?
Fall.
In the fall. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
1 year. It's exactly
1 year. Yes.
1 year. October 2022 for the French and October 23 for the English.
Yeah.
For the English edition, the rights were sold to House of Annecy even before the French book was officially released.
Yeah, that's interesting how that all works. It's a very long time. I'm just thinking so I don't know how it is marketing a book or promoting a book in Canada. Here in the US, it can often be very intense, especially for the couple months leading up and a couple months after the publication. Is it really intense for you, or you had to have this promotional season last year and promotional season this year?
Yeah, I guess it's more laid back. We had few interviews. For the French edition, we went to different book fairs. So far, not for the English one. Yeah, we just did a book launch in Ottawa for the English book. I went to Toronto to House of Annecy and then went to some independent bookstores selling the book.
That's
I guess we're just surfing and accepting invitations as they come, but I don't think we can say it's been intense.
But also you've been to Toronto because we were on the list for the Taste Canada Awards.
For the French book.
Oh, congratulations.
Wonderful. That's awesome. Congratulations.
Yeah. Well, it's a real accomplishment, and maybe we can get you to come down to Vermont and we'll do something here with the English edition. Yeah. I was telling lots of my farmer and gardening friends about it.
Sure. And if you invite us, we'll go.
Okay.
For listeners who might want to write a book like this as a family project or a project even among multiple authors like this, what advice would you give them?
It's really nice to build on the skills and expertise of each members of the family, not only in terms of knowledge, but also in terms of put the book together. We each have different skills, and communication as well. So we wrote a lot by email or using a Word document, but when needed, we call each other. Sometimes it's just easier.
I wanted to say also that because earlier you asked about how was it to work from a distance, but I think it was a pandemic project. Ironically, it kept us connected during the pandemic because we had a project to work on. And otherwise, I think it would have, the pandemic and being inside all the time. So it kept us connected, and we learned more about each other as sisters, but then colleagues. So that was really nice.
Yeah.
Very cool.
For me, I think it was really fun to have the publishing house since the early beginnings of the book. So an advice would be to reach out as early as possible before writing everything so that you can be aligned with what the publishing house is looking for also and make it more efficient.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Again, congratulations and thank you so much for spending time with us. It's a beautiful book and it's beautiful to hear how it came together and to see the three of you together.
Thank you so much for your time.
Take good
Thank
care.
you. Bye.
Okay. Thank you for listening to Everything Cookbooks. For more info and ways to support us, go to our website, everythingcookbooks.com. The show is available wherever you get your audio, and if you like what you hear, please leave us a review. It really helps other people find the show. Any book mentioned here can be found on our affiliate page at bookshop.org. Thank you, as always, to our editor, Abby Circatella. And until next time, keep on writing, reading, and cooking.